Welcome back to the Hawks Film Room podcast, hosted by myself, David Lee. Incredible game last night. The Hawks beat the Cavs in back-to-back games. Not only were they the first team to beat them at home, they gave them their third loss of the season, and two of those are to the Hawks, which is phenomenal. Now the Hawks are on the back-to-back, so in about 50-ish minutes, they're going to be playing Charlotte. So this episode will be a little bit shorter, but we'll still have all the information, all the numbers, all the film that I've been trying to consistently provide. Unfortunately, Georgia Tech played UGA, one of the best games I've ever watched, like college football, period. 8 overtimes. So I didn't get to record it last night. And, it's still to hell with Georgia. I think they got away with a lot of egregious penalties that the refs, for whatever reason, felt like they needed to help out the team that spends exponentially more on recruiting, has 6-8 guys on the line. But look, that's just me, though. I really wanted to win, not just to spite UGA because I thought, obviously for the rivalry, but I don't know if they deserve a playoff spot after what we just did to them. But yeah, it looks like the rivalry's finally back. But let's get right back into the Hawks. So Cleveland has been the most dominant team in the NBA this season. They have the highest net rating. They're beating teams by over 11 points per game. All right. And the Hawks just beat them by double digits in back-to-back games, which is absolutely phenomenal. Cleveland was the number one offense in the league, okay, before these two games against the Hawks. They were scoring 124.5 points per 100 possessions. So that's basically their offensive rating was 124. Atlanta just held the Cavs to their lowest offensive rating of the entire season. They scored just 99 points per 100 possessions, okay? That's less than a point per possession. And Cleveland has fallen nearly 2 points in their full season-long offensive rating, and they're now just the third best offense in the NBA. So major props to the Hawks defense. Their previous lowest offensive rating this season was 113.4 versus Detroit. So the Hawks basically held them under 14 points than their worst previous performance. In this game, in the first game versus the Cavs, the Hawks recorded the second highest offensive rating versus the Cavs so far. Only Boston had a better offensive performance against Cleveland. And in game two, the Hawks, of course, recorded the best defensive rating. So the Hawks came into, I think, their Quicken Loans arena, blitzed them offensively. And then when they came to State Farm, completely dismantled their offense. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into the film. What I found fascinating about last night's game, okay, Cleveland averages the fifth most assists per game in the entire NBA. I think it's 28.6 or 28.5. They had just 21. And that's a big testament to what the Hawks were able to do defensively. And the other thing is, sorry, I just lost there it is. I lost the link. They were able to force Cleveland into tough shots. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. Okay. Is this the right one? Yes. All right. So let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay. Cleveland is a really good off the dribble shooting team, typically, right? Of course, when you have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, you have these very dynamic shot creators. But the Hawks, Cleveland attempted 7 off the dribble jumpers before Atlanta even attempted 1. Okay. And they made just 2 of those 7. And so the Hawks were able to make them work. This is a lot of credit to Zaccharie Risacher and Dyson Daniels being physical and competing with guys like Donovan Mitchell, who are incredibly talented and really shifty. But Zachary's here, as much of the way as he can. It's a little bit of a push right there, but not enough to draw the whistle. Now, these guys are really talented. I think Darius Garland is pretty underrated as a shooter. But if he's going to beat you from these pull-up middies, these are the type of shots the Hawks are going to want to have Cleveland take the most possible, okay? They don't want the ball getting put in rotation, and now you got corner threes for Donovan Mitchell or guys like Sam Merrill. Again, here's another Darius Garland pull-up. A tough shot in a really nice shot from him, but not necessarily sustainable over the course of the game, which is what we saw, okay? Here's a miss. Again, we're already on the 5th or 4th pull-up jumper, and we're still, the first quarter is just a little bit halfway over, and then it ended with, this is their 7th of the game, pull-up transition 3, over a decent contest. And here's the Hawks' first one. And here's their first one, okay? So over the entire course of the game, Cleveland took 20 pull-up jumpers, and they made just 3. Donovan Mitchell didn't have a great night. I don't think he enjoyed his time here in Atlanta. Risacher was phenomenal containing him. And it's really wild that, I think Donovan Mitchell obviously is 6'1", but he's still incredibly strong, super powerful, super shifty. Risacher was able to, hang tough against him in space. And then they also had Karis LeVert for this game, who they didn't have for the previous game. So he was a little bit more of an offensive option for them. But the Hawks did a really good job of sort of baiting them into these types of looks. Again, this is a better option than him getting downhill and getting the ball into rotation. And you ultimately had just, again, a lot of tough shots where they're, trying to snake the pick and roll, and they're not always heavily contested, but from an efficiency perspective, where the Hawks were able to do what the Hawks, when you compare the quality shots the Hawks were getting, they were winning on the back end. Here's Dyson working against Donovan Mitchell. Gets hung up on the screen, but Capella was able to contain him, and then Dyson was able to get back into the picture with that wingspan and bothered the shot. Again, it was just not a great night from Donovan Mitchell. I do think some of these shots he hits normally, and he wasn't necessarily hitting those today. But at the same time, I don't feel like the Hawks allowed him to get into rhythm, right? So all of his, or the majority of his looks were coming off the dribble. And so when he did get shots like these, he wasn't in the rhythm to be able to knock down off the catch shots. And that was a really important key part of the game. Now, what's hilarious, right? Atlanta was 3 for 8 on off the dribble jumpers before the fourth quarter. So they weren't taking them in nearly the same volume as Cleveland. Like, Cleveland took a lot, especially in the third quarter. Tough shots like this, where with the way that Donovan Mitchell was struggling, you're going to live with this. And a good defense in space by Kobe Buffkin, even if he does get shifted, that's a decent contest. And you're keeping him out the paint and keeping it away from being an open 3 out of rotation. So it was always great to see that. But the Hawks then came down. You see here at the top, okay? It took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off the dribble jumpers in a row. And this is where I got a little bit nervous about the lead, just because we weren't able to generate the same quality shots we had. But the vast majority of these shots came when the Hawks had a comfortable lead, and they had already had a little bit of a cushion to take these type of shots. But we've seen the Hawks in general completely not necessarily abandon, but get away from taking those types of shots. So if you look at this quickly, their pull-up, right? It's right here. Their pull-up field goal attempt rate is the 4th lowest in the NBA. And in some aspects, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it means that the Hawks are taking less tougher shots. And that makes sense with DeJounte Murray off the team. And so the Hawks are instead trying to generate shots in different ways, where, they get to the paint at the highest frequency in the NBA. They are also attempting a lot of shots from the elbow, and they get to the free throw line. So it's a little bit of a different process from the Hawks this season. Now, in a similar vein, the Hawks also completely outclassed Cleveland on catch and shoot threes. Okay. Cleveland took 6. They made 6 and they attempted 25. Atlanta made 12 and they attempted 25. And it's honestly very much so a product of Atlanta being able to force Cleveland's guards to take those pull-up jumpers, because then the other guys weren't in rhythm. And a lot of this is intentional by the Hawks defense here, where if of the guys on the floor, okay, you don't want Darius Garland taking open catch and shoot threes. You don't want Donovan Mitchell taking open catch and shoot threes. Evan Mobley, he's grown. Like I said in the last episode, he's grown as an offensive player. But you're okay with this. Like, you're okay with this. This won't kill you from a defensive perspective. Let's see if we can look again at another catch and shoot look. The Hawks, I mentioned this in the previous episode, they're very intentional about cutting off this sort of short roller. They don't want the ball going to Evan Mobley or Jared Allen in space where they can then spray it out the shooters. So DeAndre Hunter is positioned here deep, and then he's able to get back to Georges Niang to get a decent contest, and it's a miss. Now, that's not to mean that they didn't make, any sort of catch and shoot 3-pointers, or the Hawks defense was always perfect. But I thought the effort and the process was there. Here, you probably want DeAndre Hunter to get over here and get back into the play a little bit earlier. So he meets Donovan Mitchell, and then he's just moving around. At this point, he needs to be finding a man. And even then, Sam Merrill's a great shooter. But that's a little bit of a rush. And if DeAndre Hunter would have started getting over there, here or even here, like you've got time. Once he gets bumped off, it's 4 seconds before or 3 seconds before he starts running over there. So again, not always perfect, but in general, the Hawks were able to rush Cleveland's role players and then take away those easy looks from their best shooters, and that ultimately helped them win that battle. Um, and we look at the difference between what Atlanta was able to do when they generate their 3-point shots. Here's one more look at some of the shot difficulty from their role players. Again, a lot of this is schemed to what the Hawks want them to pass the ball to. They're going to be aggressive closing out on guys like Darius Garland, even Ty Jerome, again, because he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA right now. But if this ball does wind up going to Isaac Okoro, then it's okay. Just because he hasn't necessarily had that any sort of momentum as a scorer or a shooter this season. Now, and we started with this clip. This was a beautiful pass from Jalen Johnson, and it's an on-time, on-target pass right into the shooting pocket for Zaccharie Risacher. And in general, I think the Hawks were just able to generate better shots than Cleveland. This is right when DeAndre Hunter came into the game. As Trey gets downhill, Jared Allen isn't really in position to prevent a lob attempt or to prevent a dump off to Clint Capella. So Georges Niang has to sink in, and the ball finds DeAndre Hunter. Again, he catches it right on the seams, and he's able to rise up and knock that down for his first shot of the game. Let's look at this play. I just felt like in general, the Hawks were able to get to their shots a little bit better than Cleveland did. And they had 31 assists. And they were able to get teams in rotation. Also, I don't know what's gotten into DeAndre Hunter this year, but some of the passes I've seen from him are phenomenal. He wraps his one around Sam Merrill midair, and it's right into Bowie's shooting pocket. In general, I think when you can get the Hawk any sort of defense in rotation, you're going to be able to generate better shots. And so the Hawks weren't settling for the tough shots. They kept probing. Here, Kobe gets under the basket, finds Jalen Johnson. He tees it up, bounces around the rim. But then when you compare that to something like Cleveland, it was more so like a little bit more effort from them to generate their shots than the Hawks did, and that's really all you can ask from an improving Hawks defense, right? Like that's what you're looking for. Let's see. Yeah, these back-to-back threes from Hunter. I thought this was one of the best possessions of the night. So they blitz Trey. He hits Dyson Daniels on a short roll. Dyson quickly assesses the situation, sprays it out to Jalen Johnson. Ball gets ping-ponged around. DeAndre Hunter catches it, and shoots it over his college teammate, and then calls him too small. It's great to see DeAndre Hunter show emotion and really take a lot of pride on both ends of the court. I generally think I would love to see him play against Ty Jerome every night. I thought this was another really nice pass from Trey. In general, I think teams are expecting him to be a little bit more aggressive scoring the ball. And I was kind of shocked he didn't shoot this. You could see everyone is anticipating him to shoot this. And he just throws it right over his head directly to DeAndre Hunter without even looking at him. So I think he's done a great job balancing when he's passing, but I still think I'm looking for a little bit more scoring assertiveness from him, because there are times where it feels like he's not hunting his shot and he's instead opting to be a little bit passive, which is all right at times, but we still need him to be the primary offensive, not just creator, but option as well. Hawks were also getting off the ball early in transition, and so that helped Jalen Johnson get downhill and then find guys for transition threes, which is one of the best ways to generate open looks. And that's something that they've had a big point of emphasis on, especially running off of defensive rebounds. DeAndre Hunter, it's only so much to say, but I can't give him enough flowers for the way that he's played in these 2 games. I think he's genuinely been one of the best off the bench scorers in the NBA. This is a nice off-ball movement from Bogdan Bogdanovic. Completely lost Ty Jerome. You just can't leave him that open. He's just too good. Another really interesting trend from this game. Cleveland is one of the better rim protecting teams in the NBA. Okay, they ranked in the top 5 in rim protection. Where teams are shooting 5 points worse than expected at the rim. And so what that means is um, the Hawks coming into this game were probably, at least on paper, outmatched in terms of their ability to finish efficiently at the rim with some of the drawbacks we've seen from, obviously Trey's size. Some of Dyson's floater hasn't been as consistent. Neither has Jalen Johnson's floater, even though they're all in the top 10 in attempts. But Atlanta outscored them in the paint. And they also shot almost 13 percentage points better. And again, I think a lot of this is just the sheer amount of assisted attempts that Atlanta was taking compared to the sort of tougher attempts that Cleveland had to generate against the Hawks defense. Here you see Trey get downhill. This is the type of offensive aggressiveness that's only going to help the Hawks, so it's good to see him get to the rim early. Again, you can see the Hawks attacking the rim off of an advantage created by actions where guys are getting downhill off a pass as opposed to having to create for themselves in space. This is a really tough finish from Jalen Johnson against a great shot blocker. And we'll have to talk about his growth and consistency as an offensive player. And it's just, I feel like no one really generates better looks at the rim for his bigs than Trae Young. It comes in a litany of different ways. Anytime you put two on the ball, I think it's death. And Jared Allen decides to show here, and Cleveland doesn't really have a plan beyond that because they don't have anyone else who's even remotely able to stop Onyeka around the rim. Like, you've got Sam Merrill and Darius Garland as the low man. What do you want from them? Turns into a dunk. So the Hawks were really smart in taking advantage of their size advantage at certain times, especially when Cleveland took their double bigs off the floor. And I thought they were able to get to what they wanted around the rim. This is one of my favorite things that Onyeka does. He's really good at these Gortat screens. So a Gortat screen is when the center clears a path for the ball handler by just sort of blocking off the opposing big. So you see Onyeka makes contact with Eben without doing anything illegally, and then it's just a wide open layup for Bogdan Bogdanovic. They got in transition too, of course. The Hawks have, again, put an emphasis on getting out and running off of rebounds. This is great for Onyeka Okongwu because he's a little bit more nimble and a lot better in space than most bigs, and so he's able to beat Jared Allen down the floor and finish above the rim. You can see just how many of these assisted rim attempts are coming from the Hawks, which is sort of is a good way of showing that how much better they were at getting these shots. Here, this is an sort of an inverted pick and roll that ends up getting slipped. Jalen Johnson backs down Evan Mobley. Donovan Mitchell is trying to show aggressive help here, but he has to get back to Risacher, loses Clint Capella, 2 points. Atlanta also had 5 blocks to 0 for Cleveland. Again, that's not typical, but the Hawks were able to just sort of create more looks for themselves around the rim, as opposed to, like, if you look at Evan Mobley's. I was really impressed with Mobley in general in the way that he was able to score the ball, but he also had a lot of really tough misses from trying to create for himself. And so I don't think Cleveland did a great job of, like, always getting him in, like, creating as a play finisher, because he still has to grow a little bit as a self-creator. And so a lot of these shots turned into tougher looks because he wasn't the one setting him up. Like, he had to, since no one was setting him up, he had to set himself up. So here he tries to attack Jalen Johnson in space. That's just a tough finish, again, driving into 2 shot blockers. And Jared Allen was also just nowhere to be found. And so those are the 2 most dominant rim presences. And with the way that Donovan Mitchell was also struggling to shoot the ball, they just didn't have enough to put enough pressure on the rim. Like, I think this is one of the worst offensive performances I've seen from Donovan Mitchell. I just don't think he had it. I do wonder, like, did Quinn Snyder, like, I don't feel like the Hawks played him any differently, but I do think they were able to just sort of not allow him to establish a rhythm. When he gets downhill first, then he's really dangerous. There was this is what you don't want him doing consistently. Like, when I saw this play, I was like, man, he might get going soon, because when he starts playing inside out, he's so much more dangerous because he is so dynamic around the rim. but the Hawks are able to keep him out the paint for the Jordan. And then the looks that he did have at the rim were pretty tough. And you can see how many of these are 3-pointers that he tried to fire up. And so when he did attack the rim out of rotation, Clint Capella was able to meet him. And this is also a Dyson Daniels special because Donovan Mitchell thinks he has a step on him, right? But look at how he's able to just put that ball in a vice grip. And so even when Donovan Mitchell does get it up, he's lost all momentum. The ball's going nowhere. Hawks recover it. So he, again, I don't think he enjoyed his time here in Atlanta. And that's the great thing about having Dyson Daniels and Kobe Buffkin and Zaccharie Risacher. Guards used to come here and just have a field day. You know, like they were like, playing the Hawks today, like I'm about to set a career high. And to some extent, we haven't like escaped that curse entirely, but guys have to work against us, and that's so important. So then we're gonna finish up with some miscellaneous clips on the offensive and defensive end that I found pretty interesting that I'm gonna pull up. Overall, I think this Hawks team is finding a little bit more consistency, which is encouraging. The schedule coming up is a little bit lighter. They need to take care of business against Charlotte tonight. Charlotte is not. They're missing a lot of guys, but they're not to be taken lightly. They played New York pretty tough, and I would hate for the Hawks to blow a game like this. Wait, it's the wrong thing. Wait, is it? Okay, yeah. Let's start on the offense. I'm really just one of my favorite things about Dyson Daniels is his ability to just consistently generate more possessions for the Hawks. And a lot of that comes from his offensive rebounding ability. So on this play, it ends up being a 3 for Bogdan Bogdanovic. He misses, but look at where Dyson is doing, okay? He beats 2 Cavs to the ball, grabs it before it goes out of bounds, and throws it off Karis LeVert. Really smart play, and something he does at least once or twice a game where he's generating possessions for the Hawks, whether he's taking the ball away or getting these offensive rebounds or making hustle plays like these. This is like the definition of stuff that doesn't show up in the box score, but in a 15-point game where the Hawks are trying to protect their lead, getting another opportunity to score the ball is so invaluable. And if I don't have a way to quantify like possessions added, but I feel pretty confident that he'd be in the top probably with guys like Tari Eason, but in terms of offensive rebounding and steals, he's really unmatched. This is that great ball movement that I mentioned earlier. Jalen Johnson's offensive consistency. Let's talk about it real quick. He has 12 games of 20-plus points this season. Okay, so he scored 20 more often than he hasn't. He has 4 back-to-back games of 20-plus points. He had a stretch about 5 back-to-back as well this season. And he's pretty much penciled in at this point for like 18 to 28 points, 8 to 12-ish boards, and 3 to 7 assists a night. Like he's become a lot more consistent in his production and then his like the impact. And I feel like a difference when Jalen Johnson is on the court. And the funny thing is, I was reading one of the Hawks group chats and they were like, well, Jalen's doing this with no bat. And his handle is not incredibly tight. But this made me jump out of my seat. Like I was watching this game from the 200 level. This Hezzy, created all the space he needs to get downhill. And even if I do want to see him, embrace physicality a little bit more as a bigger guy, I think he's really comfortable getting to this sort of fading away from the basket shot. And it's a good option for him to have when teams do show help on his drives. Like, could he, on an individual sense, yes, score on Donovan Mitchell at the rim? 100%. But Evan Mobley's there as well. So being able to get to this spot and shoot it confidently and effectively, that's real big for his development. Let's see what else. Some Trey stuff. I just think this guy throws a ridiculous pass every game. So here's my required Trey ridiculous pass from, again, that sort of no look behind the back or above the head thing. I liked how he got off it early. We highlighted this clip a little bit earlier, but I like the way that he got off the ball and trust guys to create for the team in transition, because if he doesn't get off the ball here, the Hawks probably don't get this shot. Also liked how he started the game a little bit rough in terms of from a playmaking perspective. He had 7 turnovers. Cleveland was very disruptive to start the game. And even though he went in the halftime with 7 turnovers, he finished with 7 turnovers. So a big adjustment from him, and I liked how he was able to get to the rack here against Georges Niang. There's been a couple times in the last couple games where I felt like he's been passive in advantageous situations like these, and it's important for him not to always go like resort to isoing, but attacking the defense when he has a defensive advantage, because guys don't typically give Trey that sort of length and quickness advantage. And so when you have someone like Georges Niang on you, you got to take advantage of it. And he definitely did that right there. The late game offense I still felt was a little bit shaky. Unfortunately, I can't pull a full clip from this particular possession because I'm blacklisted. Like we're all blacklisted from a blackout perspective, so I can't watch the full game yet until about like 2 to 3 days after. And so the site that I pull these clips from, this is like the most they have from this possession. Cleveland essentially started full court pressing, okay? And it feels to me at least that Dyson has lost a little bit of his offensive confidence. Dyson brought the ball up and he was getting hounded by Ty Jerome. And so he wasn't able to get off the ball until like 7 or 8 seconds on the shot clock. And he's not really looking to create anything offensively. He's just trying to not do anything, like not make any mistakes. And the Hawks got bailed out on back-to-back possessions. This was a huge three and a really great read from Jalen Johnson, okay? That doesn't mean it was good offense just because the shot went in. And I think the Hawks still have a ways to go to getting consistent clutch time offense because, and also I tweeted this and I was like, the Hawks got 2 back-to-back shot clock cheese threes. We definitely did. There's also a Trey one from the corner that was kind of crazy. But they just got to be a little bit more consistent. Also, teams have been hitting stuff like that against us all season. Charlotte and Brooklyn were definitely doing that to start the season. So I'm not mad at it. I just want us to be a little bit more consistent in the way we're generating shots and not getting away from what built the lead, because there's like a balance of, okay, you want to waste time here, but you also want to create a good shot. And sometimes it feels like the Hawks are drawing the clock out a little bit too much instead of focusing on getting a good shot and continuing to run up the score instead of being a little bit conservative and like trying to use the clock as another defender. So I feel like the sweet spot for them to initiate their offense is like around that 12-second mark as opposed to like that 8 or 7, because then it gets pretty messy at that point. And let's look at some defensive stuff. I'm a big fan of Dyson Daniels. He sometimes guys will get by him and then he'll just back tap the ball away from him. Does it right here. This actually turned into 2 points. Donovan Mitchell did not have a great game. A lot of that had to do with Dyson Daniels. Here he is defending him in space. Again, very stocky, quick, shifty guard. He really couldn't get to anything. Like, this is a really tough shot, even for someone like Donovan Mitchell. Cross the lane floater that's pretty contested, and he ends up missing it. I mentioned this in the first episode from our first time we played Cleveland. The Hawks are very intentional about tagging the roller. Here, Bogdan Bogdanovic is already here, right? And again, Cleveland has seen this for now a game and a half-ish at this point, right? Evan Mobley's not even looking to score the ball anymore because he knows there's going to be defense here. The mistake he makes is that he's already predetermined he's going to throw this to the corner. And there's Jalen Johnson lurking. So it's really good to see this defensive ideology come together where Bogey already setting up for a charge led Evan Mobley to be passive with the way and not even look to score the ball. And then he's thus being able to be very predictive, and Jalen's able to take advantage of it with his length and athleticism. So I thought that was a pretty cool defensive possession. I like what I saw from Kobe digging here. Sorry about that. I like what I saw from Kobe here, digging on this drive by Donovan Mitchell, taking the ball away, and then diving on it. So Cleveland actually had 2 more deflections than the Hawks, but the Hawks recovered more loose balls than Cleveland did. So, again, first to the ball here. Sam Merrill's already getting up the floor. He's not even trying to recover that ball, and then he's able to get off of it before Donovan Mitchell comes for pressure. I still felt like at times, and I do wonder how much of this is an Achilles thing. Feels like Trey hasn't been as aggressive. Evan Mobley is not a traditional mismatch, okay? Yes, he's 7 foot, but he's also a pretty dynamic defender. So I understand him not attacking him in space, but he's picking up his dribble early. He's not probing. He's not like trying, like it's certain things like that make me wonder how healthy he is. And he has been on the injury report for a couple consecutive games with Achilles tendonitis. So hopefully everything is all good with him. This play results in 2 points for Atlanta, but I think it was emblematic of like his lack of aggression. He just throws this pass to Dyson Daniels, who doesn't have a great angle on it. Almost gets taken away. Now he reacts quickly to it, and it turns again to 2 points. But I thought it was like, is everything okay with Trey? He finished with 12 shots, which for him is kind of like strange. I thought this was a sharp defensive possession until the end. So Hawks put 2 on the ball against Donovan Mitchell when he's on the corner. Dyson Daniels steps up to stop Evan Mobley from scoring at the rim. Trey X's out to Darius Garland. And then here, this is where the breakdown is. Onyeka and DeAndre Hunter go to X out to Ty Jerome. And again, he's a high priority guy with the way he's shooting the ball from the 3-point line. Onyeka can't see DeAndre, and Dre doesn't think Onyeka's going to get out there, is what I'm assuming. And so this ends up putting 2 on the ball. Neither of them contain them. So I'm like, bro, it went from a great defensive possession to like, if this was done a little bit better, this could have been a great, like one of the best of the season. And he ends up driving that crease and finishing at the rim. But you can see the vision for the way the Hawks want to play defense if they can get that a little bit crisper. Cleveland tried to go backdoor to counter that early tag on the roller. Here it only works because Darius Garland loses the ball, and then Zaccharie Risacher tries to pinch in a little bit more. This was also a ticky-tack foul, but just an example of like some of the cat and mouse game that Cleveland and Atlanta had going on. And I'm kind of at this point, I'm convinced that the overall principle for the Hawks is that they don't want the ball to drive the middle. And that's fine, okay? I think for the most part, that's a good principle. I do feel like, okay, this is Sam Merrill. Great 3-point shooter. I don't think we need to show that much help, Bogey. I just don't think so. Like maybe 8 feet away from Caris LeVert, a capable 3-point shooter. If Sam Merrill gets all the way to the rim, all right, man. He's not a dynamic playmaker. He's not a great at the rim finisher. It's okay. It's okay to be a little bit more attached to Caris LeVert here, in my opinion, especially because this does get sprayed out and it becomes a 3. But outside of like stuff like this, very little complaints from me from the Hawks defense. We'll see how it holds up against. I think we in general do match up really well against Cleveland. It'd be really funny if we play them in the playoffs because I think that in some ways we do have their number. We're able to stretch them out because of guys like DeAndre Hunter. And DeAndre Hunter is able to take advantage of their wings when Isaac Okoro was off the floor, but the Hawks are able to take advantage of Isaac Okoro's offensive liabilities when he's on the floor. And then Jared Allen is not as aggressive as he should be against a Hawks defense that can struggle to rotate. He took just 3 shots. Again, that's a lot of that is about how the Hawks are playing defense. And so they kind of just cut off the water for everyone else. You only had 3 Cavs in double figures. Darius Garland and Evan Mobley had good games, but it was almost so like to the point where they weren't able to facilitate for others, which is great. And you compare that to the Hawks who had 3 20-point scorers and they had 6 guys in double figures. So yeah, really great game from the Hawks. Another encouraging step in the right direction. Zaccharie Risacher in particular, he's starting to look a lot more comfortable. I actually do have one more thing I want to show. I was at the game I was watching with a couple of friends, and from the vantage point it was really cool to see just in general. Like I could see the whole entire floor. It was like I was playing 2K on broadcast view. And this particular play really stood out to me because I love how smart Risacher is off the ball. He sees his confusion from Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Jalen Johnson's here in the corner. He just flashes to the rim. Donovan Mitchell was trying to make up that gap that he had defensively, and so he just flies by on the first pump fake. Then it's another pump fake. Evan Mobley flies out the way, and it's 2 points. He just has a lot of savvy for a rook. He's constantly moving, constantly putting pressure on the defense with his movement. And I think that as soon as he puts on a little bit more weight, he's already pretty much the same height as Jalen Johnson. So the Hawks will have a really disruptive duo that can do a lot of multi-positional stuff, super versatile. Hopefully, one of them, I think, will develop into being a great 3-point shooter. I still think that's in Zaccharie Risacher. I think his mechanics are clean. I just think it needs a little bit more time to get adjusted, to the speed of the NBA game and all that. And that reminds me, I didn't finished looking at the blocks. I have to show this one before we get out of here because it was absolutely phenomenal from Risacher. And again, like one of those things where you're like, okay, wow, like if this is something he can do, then we're talking about a whole different ball game. Is this still showing? Okay, cool. So turnover here for the Hawks. Risacher is getting back. He's jogging at this point. Okay. Isaac Okoro is maybe 12 feet ahead of him. On the pass, I want you to see where Risacher is. He's still outside of the key. When he goes up to block this shot, he's jumping from the other side of the key. He flies across the face of the rim and pins it. Like, this is an all-out defensive effort, and made possible by his athleticism, timing, and length. This is a special, special defensive play, and he's already a plus defensively. Wait till he finds his legs offensively, and then the Hawks are going to have a really special wing duo. And then when you combine him with Dyson Daniels and Kobe Buffkin, you've got a really great baseline for disruption and just defensive capability, a lot of versatility, and that's what happens when you prioritize that through the draft, and then the Hawks are able to completely stymie a team like Cleveland, who has pretty much fried every team that they played against. So let's hope that the Hawks take that same mentality they had from last night into Charlotte. We have had a poor track record of maintaining the same level of intensity against inferior quality opponents. Charlotte is missing a lot of people. They don't have LaMelo. They don't have Grant Williams. They don't have Miles Bridges. They don't have Trey Mann. They don't have Mark Williams, and I don't think they have Nick Richards either. So really no excuse to lose tonight. This Hornets team played New York really tough. We'll see if the Hawks are able to keep that same sort of momentum from them beating Cleveland back-to-back. They've got a little bit of a softer schedule coming up ahead with the way that they've got after this game in December, they've got the Pelicans, Bucks, Lakers, Nuggets, which is going to be tough, Spurs. So this is a tougher stretch, but it's going to be a little bit sweetened by having those Pelicans first with the way they've been playing. And then on the tail end of the schedule, you get the Bulls and the Raptors. So this is going to be a stretch where you'll see the Hawks play a lot of quality opponents, and we'll see if they're able to continue rising to the task like they have all season. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll have something up for the Hornets game probably tomorrow. But yeah, let's hope the Hawks get a W. 'Cause I'm kind of tired of the fluctuations, but they're building towards something for sure. And yeah, y'all have a great night.